Hey everyone, this is Baylor, and in this video I'm going to show you part 2 of creating a model view controller with PHP from scratch. So what I'm going to do here is we're pretty much ready to go. I mean, everything's linked the way it needs to go. We load the core file. The core loads everything that we need here, such as our controller and Sammy and the router, and we also load our default routes. So what we want to do though is we want to actually be able to load our controller, because that is what we want to find out when we have the matching group. But we want to find the controller, and we can get the controller because when we find the matching root, which would be / in this case, we actually find our controller name, which we're actually going to set to welcome, and we're going to set our action to index. But what we need to do here is when we actually get these functions, so they actually run in the root, map, root, or get, we're going to actually change our callback to path, because that's going to be the path to our controller and our action. So we'll copy and paste these and replace the callback here. And one thing we're going to do is we're going to create a public static variable called path, and that'll be equal to null by default. And when we run this, we're actually going to save that. So we'll say self path equals our path that we create here in this parameter. So go ahead and paste that in here, and every time this function runs, it'll save that path. So one thing that we'll be able to get with this is in our dispatch function, we'll have access to that. So we can say self path, and we can say echo the self path, which we won't get anything because we haven't actually made this run. So let's go ahead and do that. One thing we'll do real quick though is in Sammy, we'll remove all these extra functions at the top because we don't want those to be publicly available. So what we're going to do in the process function, it actually is working. I mean, it's finding everything we need. Like if we echo out found, you can see this is found, and it's found only once because even though it gets run multiple times, when it can't find the root here, it returns false, so it stops it from running. So this is running when it actually finds a matching root. And what we'll do here is we're just going to call our map dispatch. And if we reload, you can see that something didn't happen, right? Oh, up here in our dispatch, we want to say like this was found, and we found it. So you'll see me do this a lot where I say echo found because I'm just making sure all my functions are running. But what we can do here is, it's really cool, we can actually find our path. So we say echo self path. You can see that it loaded our welcome index. Now I'm not too terribly sure on how this works. I'm assuming it's going to find the first one. So if I did another one here, said like map get, when we go to just / if I said another or something else blah, you can see that it's running the very first one that's found. It's not running all these others. So we could put in here, like runs top to bottom. Most important should be at the top. Okay, so our roots are working. We're actually able to find out which one of these to load. So let's go ahead and figure out what we're doing here. So we'll go ahead and say our path equals our self path. So we don't have to keep typing this. But what we also want to do is we want to run our function to explode this. Because you can see it's pretty easy to figure out. This is our controller, this is our action, and they're separated by a hash. So if we put our hash in here, and we debug our path, you'll actually see that 0 is our controller and 1 is our action. So it's pretty easy to actually find that, and we'll save that. We'll say our controller is equal to path 0, and our action is equal to path 1. So if we reload, you can see everything's still working. I mean, it's pretty easy to actually get this up and going. So this part is done. We can put that back at the top. So we have found the matching group. So we found the controller and the action. We can get rid of that. So now what we need to do is include the app controller. Now our app controller is going to be pretty basic. It's going to be like the way our hierarchy is going to work here is if I open up like text edit. what we're going to have here is the URL, or the URL goes to like example.com. So we get that /, and / is going to be routed to the welcome controller, which will be written like this, welcome controller. And that's going to be equal to welcome controller.php. So let's go ahead and create that file, welcome controller.php. So welcome controller. And our welcome controller, so welcome controller, is going to extend it extends our app controller. Now our app controller is going to be equal to app controller.php. So let's go ahead and create that file. We'll create this file, we'll call it app controller. Okay, so our app controller, and our app controller extends our regular controller. And our regular controller has already been created here. So let's go ahead and create that. Our welcome controller is a class that is called welcome controller. Notice the difference. Our file name is welcome _ controller, and our class name is welcome camel case controller here. And that extends the app controller. And our app controller is going to be here. And it is going to be a class called app controller that extends our regular controller. So what's nice about having this app controller is you'll notice that every single controller I'll extend this one, which will make it come out where anything you put inside of here will be available to all your controllers, which is pretty cool for us because anything that we put in our controller down here will be available to both of these and all your regular controllers because of the way their extensions work, our hierarchy. So we can close both of those files, but what we need to do now is we need to include our app controller, and then we need to also include that one. So the way we'll do this is we're going to create a public static function. Then we're just going to call this load controller, and we'll have a name for that. So when we load our controller, basically we're going to do two things. We're going to need to find our controller, so we'll do that. We'll just say path, or controller path is going to be equal to, and we're going to get our base path, or I'm sorry, our app path this time, and we're going to go into our controllers folder, /, and here we're going to find that name _ controller.php. So you can see here that when I come up here and I say include when I say include the app controller, we can do self load controller name. And what this will do is it's going to run this function, and it's going to look for app. So we're going to get all the way to our app folder, controllers, so we get our controllers folder, app, so app _ controller.php, which is right here. So we're going to say if the file exists at our controller path, then we're going to include that file. So here we'll just throw in our controller path. So right here, I'm going to find variable name, where, right here, line 39. Oh, this needs to be app. So if we reload this, you can see this is working, and we know it's working because we didn't get an error, and I can come up here and write out like echo found, and you can see this was found. Okay, and the next thing that we need to do is try to find load our roots controller. So here we'll just say self load controller, and here we'll just put in our controller variable. So that should be working as well. And now the next thing that we need to do is we need to run the matching action. Well, the way this is going to work is we're going to have to create a temporary class for this. So the way we'll do this is we're going to get our class name, and our class name is going to be equal to, and we know the structure is going to be like welcome controller. So we have our controller name, so we're just going to say UC first controller, and that's because when we put it in our roots, you can see, well, when we put it in our roots, you can see that it's lowercase welcome. So we need to uppercase the first letter, and we're going to append controller to it. So that's actually going to be our class name that we're looking for it inside of our welcome controller, and that file has been included now. It might be nice to put in include once, so we don't have to worry about this getting run twice and trying to include the same file twice, because we get an error when that happens. And what we're going to do is we're going to say if the class exists, and we're looking for a class name, then we're going to create a temporary class, and that's going to be equal to a new class name. So what we're going to end up having here is this temporary class is going to be our actual class welcome controller. So we can test this and see if it's making sure it's working by running our constructor function. And we'll say echo run. And you can see that this was actually run. So we know that found our controller and that it actually is working. But what now we need to do is we need to run the action. So run the matching action. So we're going to put that inside of our if while we make sure that our class is there. And we're just going to say if is callable. And we're going to pass an array through here. And the array is basically, we're going to have our temporary class. So we have our object, which is the whole class. And we're looking for that action. And that's going to be our index function. And if it is callable, then we're actually going to call it. So we'll say temp class action, like that. And so we can go ahead and put that up here as well. So run our matching action. So if we go ahead and put that in here, so we create our function called index, we can say echo found. And if we do this and reload, you can see that it found it. So it actually is able to find our index action, which is pretty cool. I mean, that's pretty handy to have. And I make it sound kind of dumb, but I mean, it's pretty cool because right now, I mean, this is pretty much fully dynamic. I mean, you go in to find a route and it finds welcome index and it automatically loads this file, and everything's pretty consistent, and I really like that. And that's kind of why I like creating my own Model View controller all the time, because it's just fun and you can learn a lot. So the next thing that we need to do, now that we've actually initialized and called our action, we need to get our view file. So the way this will work is it's going to be in a folder that will match the controller name, so welcome. And we're going to have this as the action name, so index, and the format, which will be HTML. So let's go ahead and get that. So we'll create a new function down here, and this will be load the view. So load view, and this will be our view file's name, and it's going to be very similar to our controller path. So we'll just copy this and paste it in here. So we're going to change this part to our views, and we're also going to need to get our controller, because it actually goes into a controller folder. So we'll put in the controller name up here, and here we'll separate this out and put in a controller. And we have our name, and we'll also need to get the format, because you'll notice that it goes to action format.php. So you can see we're going to our views controller folder, so it goes to the welcome, it gets our name, and that's our action, and we can put that as action, so it just makes sense. And we're going to separate this with a dot and put in our format. So we'll change this to view path, and we'll copy and paste that in here, and we'll go ahead and run that. We'll just say self load view, and here we're going to pass in the controller, the action, and the format. Now we haven't actually found our format, so let's go ahead and get that. The best way that I found it is if you go to sammy.php. You can see that I set it up so we have our Sammy format here, and we'll just put that in here, the Sammy format. And what we'll do here is, right here it's making sure that the format actually exists, and it's just doing a few things here that I don't really want to explain. Basically what we're going to do is say else, and we're going to add in here the Sammy format equals HTML. because what that'll do is if there is no format, so if they didn't add .json or .xml, then our default will be HTML, and that'll load the .html format here. So in our router, we need to go right up here. We need to get our format. So if we reload and go in here to index.html and add something, so like hello world, you can see that everything's pretty much up and going. I mean, it's pretty fast and easy to get this all up and going. I mean, it seems so complicated, but when you take it apart and look at it individually, it's pretty simple. Because right now what we've got is we're able to find our path, get our controller in action, we get the class name, so we have welcome controller in this case. We're able to load that controller, or load our app, then we'll load that controller. We make sure, and that's just the file. We make sure that the class exists. We create a temp version of the class name. We make sure that we can call our welcome controller action, which would be index in this case. And we load the view file, and that only happens if the view file exists. What we'll do real quick though is we'll add error messages. So the easiest way to test all these error messages would be to create like a 404 page. So in here, what we're going to do is in our routes, we'll just say map get, and we'll go to 404. We're just going to load a dummy controller and what's it called? Oh, a dummy action. And neither one of these exists, but it'll be a good way for us to actually make this setup and get our errors messages. So the first error message we need to get is when we're trying to load our controllers. So up here we'll say else, and we'll give a dummy message that basically says like the controller, and here we'll put in our name. Could not be found in, and here we'll actually put in our controller path. So if we run this, you can see that we got, oh, I probably need to wrap this in parentheses. You can see the dummy controller, the controller dummy controller. Well, let's go ahead and make this bold so you can actually distinguish it. The dummy controller could not be found in, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to wrap this in pre-tags. So it's pretty, I like this format because you can see the controller could not be found in, and it gives you the full path, so just kind of look at app, controllers, dummy controller, controller.php. What we could do here to make this a little bit easier to actually see is just say hello, and then over here in our action do something like blah, So the controller hello cannot be found in this right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that controller because now we know that problem has arisen. So arisen, not arisen. Okay, hello controller, because that's what it tells me right here. So we'll create that file and reload, and something else has happened. So let's go check it out. So if we go to the router, you can see that it's checking if the class exists. So we need to add an else statement here and say die. The class, and here we'll put in our class name. So class name could not be found in, and in pre-tags now this is where we're actually going to need to grab this whole path here. So let's go ahead and just grab all of this, which is kind of annoying to have to do it, but I mean, you're not really going to play around with these error messages a whole lot. And we can actually merge these two. Okay, so let's go ahead and also make this bold so we can actually kind of see this. So undefined variable name, we'll actually put over here controller because we have access to that. So reload, you can see the hello controller could not be found in, and we actually get our file name. So we know the file exists now. And actually what we're going to do here is, because it says the controller file could let's see, the file, and then over here we'll actually put in name underscore controller.php could not be found at. Okay, so that'll actually kind of give us a better error message, because if I came over here and put in like site, you can see the site controller.php, the file site controller.php could not be found at this location. Okay, so back over to our hello. You can see the hello controller cannot be found in, so we're looking in this file. And the next thing is we'll go ahead and create that class. So PHP class hello controller extends our app controller. Okay, so now we're having a problem with our action not being callable. So here we'll add an else and say die the action, and we'll put in strong tags action could not be called from, and here we'll put in from the controller strong tags again, and we'll put in our controller name. So this is just kind of tidying things up, so you can see we'll put in class name. So you can see the action block could not be called from the controller hello controller. So these error messages, I know they seem kind of dumb right now, but I mean, whenever I build my MVCs, and I kind of come back to them later on, it's like, wow, I'm so glad I threw that in there, because it's so easy to figure out what I need to do next without the documentation. Yeah, so thanks for watching this video. I'm going to go ahead and put this version up on GitHub next, because everything is kind of coming together. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set it up so that when you're in your... We can remove this because these are not necessary. And I'll remove that root. And come back. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set it up where when we're inside of our welcome controller, we can create variables here that are available to us in our view. So thanks for watching this video, and goodbye.